Hey everybody, it's Tim from Tadabase here, and this is Build It with Tim. On today's episode, we're going to talk about 10 tips and tricks for building applications with Tadabase. Now, I've done a video on this in the past with 10 other tips and tricks, and I'll make sure that it shows up at the end of this video. We're going to explore some of the finer details within the platform today and discuss some features or options that maybe you didn't know existed. Either way, I hope all 10 of these tips and tricks can help you building applications inside of Tadabase and make you a better builder. Let's jump right into the builder now and get started. Tip number one is called page versioning. Page versioning allows you to go back in time and revert to a previous version of your page. In this example, let's say I were to accidentally delete a component from my page, and I realize later on that I have made a mistake. I can simply go up to the page history dropdown next to your page title, and I can revert back to a previous version of the page. In addition to this, by leaving version comments every single time you save a page, you'll be able to see exactly what was worked on and by who. Tip number two is the page status option. When you are viewing a page inside the page builder, by navigating to the settings tab, you can toggle the status of a page from on to off or off to on. When you save a page with the status disabled, a red dot is going to appear inside your page tree. When somebody tries to access this page through your live application, it's going to give them a 404 notice saying that the page is not found. Now, there's a number of reasons why you might want to do this. Let's say the app or the page is currently under construction and you want to disable that page so that nobody has access to it while you're working on it. Or let's say you just don't want the page to be functional inside your application anymore, but you don't want to delete it in case you need it again later. From here, you can navigate to your app settings and the 404 error page to define a custom message or redirect to another page when somebody tries to visit a disabled page. For tip number three, we're still inside the page builder and we're dealing with our pages. Now, as your app can grow larger and larger over time, you might end up with a significant number of pages. Navigating through those pages can be sometimes difficult or tedious to find the page that you need. We have a search bar up at the top of the page, but that's not really the tip I'm going to show you. The tip we're going to talk about is filtering and showing the page slug. At the top of this dropdown, you could quickly find a page within a layout by filtering for that particular layout. You can also filter by page security, meaning which role is a page secured by, in the additional Show Slug option here at the bottom. By enabling Show Slug, we can view the actual page slug that appears inside your browser address bar inside the URL of your application. So if you need to find a particular detail page, rather than search by order details, because you might have many pages titled order details, you can now see the slug associated with the page. Tip number four is the ability to put your application into read-only mode. This is going to lock down the front end of the application where it's still accessible and can be viewed, but no data can be created or edited or deleted. To enable read-only mode, we're going to navigate to App Settings. Under General Settings, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, you will see the option for read-only mode. Enabling this option will give you the ability to define a custom message, and when saved, the live application is still visible, but if we try to add or edit any of the particular data inside the application, we will be restricted from doing so. For tip number five, we are staying within our application settings here, and we are looking at the support option inside of our settings menu. Inside this page, we have the ability to view details about the connections between the tables inside of our application. This helps us get an overview of how the different data tables are working together and where the connections live and how they interact with other data tables. You can view it in text form here, or you can view the table connection graph. This is super helpful as some extra insight into your application as you're building, so that you can kind of see a view of why something might not work as you expect it. For instance, if you wanted to know something about a supplier from the purchase order level, it's not possible because there is no connection or related connection from purchase order to suppliers. For tip number 6, we're going to move into the automation section of our application, specifically scheduled tasks. Inside a scheduled tasks, we have the ability to update a table. Inside of scheduled tasks, we have the ability to not only run an action on every record that a task processes. In addition to the actions that are processed inside of your scheduled task, we also have the ability to trigger a post action. Post action means that when the task is completed, we can do one of these two options. We can send an email to a specific email address, or we could trigger a webhook. Now we'll talk about webhooks here in a second, but these are the two options that are available to you. So after our task is completed, you can see I get an email that lets me know that it's been completed and how many records it processed. For tip number 7, we are inside of our scheduled task and we are talking about enabling rapid updates. What rapid update is going to do is it's going to wait to process equations and calculated fields until after all of the records have been processed within your task. This means if you simply want to update the date and time of a particular field inside of a data table, but you're doing it across 20,000 records, you might want to enable rapid update so that the equations processed later on after the task is completed. In addition to the rapid update feature inside of scheduled tasks, we also have the ability to do this inside of a form component. When adding a record using a form component, we can navigate to the Options tab, and then we can scroll down and choose Update Equations Behind the Scenes. This is going to do a similar process where the record's going to be created, and then we're going to update the equations at a later time. By enabling these two options, it ensures that data is added or updated quickly, and all of the calculations can be done shortly thereafter. For tip number 8, we are still working inside of form components in the page builder. And tip number 8 is going to be the ability to preserve form values. By enabling this option, it's going to allow us to start filling out a form and come back to that form and fill it out later if we need to. You can see here I'm now inside my live application viewing this page to add a statement. I can start to fill out this form. Now, if at any point I need to take a break from filling out this form or my tab accidentally gets closed, it's okay because I'm not going to lose my progress. When I go back to this page, you can see that those values are still there. Now, after I fill out this form and click save, that memory is now purged and I can start again. This is an incredibly helpful feature when you might be filling out a form that takes an extended period of time, or you have a multi-step form where you have a lot of inputs that need to be completed. For tip number 9, we're going to learn how to add some fields to build a little bit of an audit trail. In tip number 8, we added a new record to the profit and loss statement table. But you can see here that I don't know who created it and when they created it. By adding a connection field to the users table, we can call this created by. And by adding a date time field and calling it created on, we can navigate to the rules tab of our data table and create a table rule to say every time a record is created, we're going to set created by to the logged in user. So we'll capture the user who actually created that record, and then we can set created on to the current date and time. Now, every single time a record is created, we'll be able to see exactly who did it and when. For our final tip, tip number 10, I want to show you how you can send data out of your Tadabase application using outgoing webhooks. And we kind of glossed over that in the post action of our scheduled task. We have this ability to send webhooks from scheduled tasks as a post action, where if I enter a URL endpoint to receive a webhook, when I run that task, when the task is completed, we're going to get a webhook sent in the same way that an email was sent out, with helpful information about our task so that we can handle that data as necessary. But the more common use case for outgoing webhooks is through the Automation tab in the Outgoing Webhooks section. By adding a new webhook, we'll just say send data, we'll give it a name, we can pick a data table, and then we can do the same thing where we enter that webhook URL where we want to send our data, and then the event in which we will trigger this webhook. So we'll leave it as new record for now. I can add conditions to my webhook to make sure that I'm only sending webhooks when I want to, and we have the ability to view our logs after those webhooks have been sent. If I go back to my data builder here and simply just add a new record quite quickly here, and we navigate back to the website that is capturing our webhook, you can see it's passing all of our record data through a webhook. Now, what you do with that webhook is a little bit more advanced for this conversation, but I think we'll do a video on that later on down the road. So we've reached the end of our 10 tips and tricks for today's video, and I certainly hope that you found them all useful and informative to help you inside the Tadabase builder and to build better apps. If you haven't seen the first tips and tricks video, it's right here available for you to click on now and take a look. Thanks so much for watching this week's episode of Build It with Tim. We'll see you next time. Take care.